Yeah, for sure. In your book, The Gray Rhino, it talks about how to recognize obvious dangers that we ignore. I think the government is ignoring the obvious danger of like unlimited helicopter money, and it sounds like they're going to put another stimulus package through, and how long term that's really not a solution. So let's talk about your book, The Gray Rhino. What caused you to want to write that book, and what's it about? And let's dig in there a little bit.
So the Gray Rhino is a metaphor for the big scary thing that's coming right at you. Think of it, 2 tons with a big horn. It's pointed, it's coming your way. It's pawing the ground, it's snorting, it's angry. Like you got to do something right then and there. It's high impact, it's obvious, and it gives you a challenge. What are you going to do? And it's sort of a response to 2 other concepts. One, the Black Swan, which is a big finance concept that became big after 2008, which is the idea that you can get knocked over by something that you can't even imagine, you can't picture, you can't predict. And that was a good point. I mean, I think it's very important for businesses to think about being more resilient, to widen the range of things that they consider that they need to watch out for. But the truth is, it ended up being used as a cop-out. People are like, oh, we never saw it coming. Nobody could have seen it coming. And you saw that used at the very beginning of the pandemic, where they're, oh, nobody could have seen this coming. I'm like, did you see Bill Gates' 2015 TED Talk? Did you see all of these reports from all the public health officials around the world? Have you seen all of the other pandemics? I mean, it was kind of crazy. And in fact, the author of The Black Swan wrote about pandemics as a potential future thing that was very predictable. So the Gray Rhino is a counterpoint to that, in part, because these are the things that we can see. They're very obvious.
Yeah.
The other is the elephant in the room, which by definition, nobody does or says anything about. And it just kind of stands there. And that's not okay. I didn't think it was all right to normalize this idea that you see a problem and don't do or say anything about it. So the Gray Rhino is really a challenge to be accountable when you see a big scary problem coming at you. And I often use this image of the rhino right in front of you. But the truth is, it doesn't necessarily have to be right in front of you. It could be way off in the horizon. I went on safari for research for the book, and I realized how hard it is to see them sometimes when they're far away. They're going to kind of blend in with the landscape. But the important thing is the Gray Rhino is big. It's obvious. It's going to do damage. It gives you a choice. The rhino is the big scary thing with the horn. And it's gray, actually, because there are 5 rhino species, one of which is the white rhino, which is not actually white. Another one is the black rhino, which is not actually black. They're both gray, which is kind of obvious. There's a 2-ton gray thing in front of you, right? But we don't talk about it. We're always calling things by what they're not. So it seemed to really reinforce this metaphor that we're much more likely than we want to admit to ignore obvious things. But we don't have to ignore them. That's the key part of this concept, is that you've got a choice. And I started writing the book because I wanted to understand the difference between leaders who see the Gray Rhino and do something and the ones who don't. And sort of the initial event was the difference between the Argentinian debt crisis, which I was writing at the time about a chance to turn it the right direction, which nobody took. And then Greece 10 years later, which was still not a great situation, but they saw it and they did something about it. But it's so true for so many things. For climate change is a big one. Financial crisis, I still write about quite a lot. Healthcare, obviously. I mean, the pandemic is such a big example of it, and I've gotten so many calls from media and other people about how to apply this metaphor to the pandemic, but not just retroactively, which is how you use the Black Swan. You can only see it in hindsight, right. But how to use it to look ahead, to better understand what your reaction is to the big obvious thing, to understand your organization's reaction, and to figure out how to do a better job to deal with the gray rhinos that are coming at you.